We are going to be taking a look at 10 amazing clone fragrances. And a couple of these are going to be some clones that not a lot of people really talk about. These fragrances are not in any particular order, they are just randomly picked. And the first one we're going to take a look at is Lattafa Maahir Legacy. So if you're not familiar with this is a clone of Parfum de Marly Sedley. And this stuff is like a very classy citrus fragrance. So it starts off with a lot of fresh lime and grapefruit. It has a little bit of mint underneath, along with some slightly herbal touches and some juniper, with a little bit of ambroxan underneath that really kind of warms it up, along with some vanilla. This stuff is fresh, citrusy, and classy. And when I want to put myself in a good mood, this is the fragrance that I go for. It's really awesome in spring and summer. And for a citrus-dominant fragrance, the performance on it is pretty solid as well. I get around 6 hours of longevity on this, and the projection on it is about average. And once you spray it, it is very similar to Sedley. Certainly not a one-to-one, but the price difference is there. If you want something similar to Sedley, this is the stuff to go for. Next up on the list is Rayan Tradition Insurrection II Wild. So this is a clone of the discontinued Amen Pure Havane. And if you're not familiar with that fragrance, it is a sweet honey tobacco scent. While there are some distinctions between the original and this clone fragrance, the issue is the original is discontinued, and unless you want to pay a lot of money to find one on eBay, this is a really solid alternative. This is a mix of honey, vanilla, tobacco, and just a little bit of cocoa powder. Overall, it comes off like a sweet honey tobacco fragrance, but it is not sickly sweet to me. It's very masculine and has a little bit of darkness and earthiness to it. Overall, it's a very linear fragrance. It does come off a little bit harsh in the opening, but after about 15 or 20 minutes, it really turns into a smooth honey cherry tobacco fragrance with a lot of spice behind it and a touch of vanilla. Performance on it is also really good, especially for the price. I think it's around low 20s or $25. Another solid clone fragrance. Next up is one that a lot of people probably have not heard of. One, because it's a fairly new fragrance. And then two, there's just not a lot of clones out of the original here. And that is The Eagle Has Landed by Dual Fragrances, which is a clone of Parfum de Marly Altair. So Altair is basically a vanilla fragrance. It opens up with a robust note of orange blossom, along with a lot of bourbon vanilla, a little bit of spices like cinnamon, and a touch of sweetness like praline. It also has predominant notes of musk and ambroxan. Overall, it's a very warm, cozy, comforting, and inviting vanilla scent that's unisex. Definitely doesn't come off feminine to me at all. The Eagle Has Landed by Dua is very, very close to the original in the dry down. It does have some differences in the opening. The orange flower is a little more musky and animalic than the original, so it's a little bit harsher. It's also a whole lot stronger in the opening to my nose. However, if you can get past that, which is 5 or 10 minutes, and again, it's not bad, it's just different than the original. But if you can get past that, the dry down is where this fragrance really shines, which turns into a warm, cozy, inviting vanilla fragrance with a little bit of sweet spices underneath, like cinnamon and cardamom, along with a touch of praline. To me, this is a signature scent for the fall. Performance on this is outstanding. I get 8-10 plus hours off of the clone. Next up, we have Afnan's 9 p.m., which is a clone of Jean Paul Gaultier's Ultramalt. So if you're looking for that sweet fragrance to go out to a bar, go out to a club, pull in compliments, that is what this fragrance is designed for. This stuff opens up with a lot of fresh, sweet citrus, apple, bergamot, almost like the pear opening that Ultramalt has, along with a lot of really sweet vanilla and cinnamon. This stuff smells so good. This comes off like a very casual and fun fragrance, one that you can wear out, pulling compliments. It is a little different than Ultramalt. To me, it doesn't have that really syrupy sweetness that Ultramalt has, but personally, I never really liked Ultramalt. It just did not do it for me, but there is enough difference with 9 p.m. that I do love it. So this fragrance does get a ton of hype on social media. It is wildly popular. So I'm definitely not the only one saying that this is an amazing cologne. This stuff is awesome. Performance on this stuff is also outstanding. I get around 8 hours with this. I've heard some people say that they can get more than 10 hours out of this. So overall, just a really good fragrance, and it does exactly what it's supposed to do. All right, next up, going in a completely different direction, is Charuto Mysterious Tobacco. So this is a clone of Carolina Herrera Mystery Tobacco. So this is a very masculine tobacco fragrance. It opens up with osmanthus, which is kind of like a leathery apricot note, along with a lot of ginger, spices, and tobacco. It's sort of in the same vein as like a Mancera red tobacco, but this is definitely unique and different from that. This is a little bit darker and has that leathery nuance to it, along with a lot of patchouli. The scent trail that this stuff leaves behind is also amazing. So performance on this is really good. I get about 6 to 8 hours of longevity, and it also has really good projection. I had a friend wear this recently, and we went to an outdoor game, and 2 to 3 hours after he put it on, I was standing 4 to 5 feet away from him, and occasionally I could catch whiffs of it. Next up, we have Lattafa Eternal Oud. So this is a clone of MFK's Grand Soir. So this is basically a amber fragrance, or an amber and vanilla fragrance, heavily leaning on the amber part. So this is a warm and spicy amber style fragrance. It has a touch of vanilla underneath it. It's not an overly complex fragrance, but neither is Grand Soir. But this stuff just really works. It's warm, it's comforting, inviting. In the opening, it kind of has a little bit of a nutty accord to it. To my nose, the difference between this and the original would be the opening. It's just a little bit different in the MFK version. Overall, a really good fragrance. This stuff smells amazing in the winter, also works in the fall. And this is also something I would wear in the cooler nights in the springtime. Performance on it is pretty good. I get around 6 hours off of it. While the name is Eternal Oud, it is not a powerhouse fragrance that's going to fill up a room. But if you love warm amber fragrances or fragrances that are amber heavy, this is something that you really should check out or look into. So the next one is probably one that most people have never heard of. And honestly, I really don't see a lot of guys talking about the original as well. And that is Woody Sage by Dossier. So this is a clone of Jo Malone Wood Sage and Sea Salt. Okay, so hear me out on this. To me, Jo Malone is a very feminine heavy or feminine leaning brand. Dossier is a clone company that does a lot of mass advertising on social media. A lot of the fragrances do not seem to be very well received by a lot of the YouTubers who have reviewed them in the past. So I'll just say that I've tried about 5 or 6 of their fragrances, like their Bleu de Chanel, their Sauvage, etc., and none of them would make it in my top 50 list. However, this one is really, really, really good. So Wood Sage and Sea Salt, I think, is the #1 seller for Jo Malone. I could be wrong there, but if not, it's wildly popular. To me, this is the perfect unisex fragrance. But if you look at the notes, it sounds and looks like a masculine leaning fragrance. It has notes like sea salt, sage, grapefruit, seaweed. Those sound like notes that are in many popular blue or aquatic style fragrances for guys. What makes this such a good option for getting this clone fragrance is the Wood Sage and Sea Salt is a cologne concentration, so it literally lasts about an hour, and it does not project at all, but it smells amazing. So the Dossier version, Woody Sage, is really close. It projects a whole lot more, and it lasts a whole lot longer. Granted, it only lasts for about 4 hours, and the projection is good for about an hour. To me, that's far better than I get from the original, and it is way, way, way less expensive. As far as the scent, it's a very crisp, clean ocean air fragrance, a lot of sea salt. It also has a note of driftwood. Also, it has that herbal component to it with the sage. Overall, it's just a fantastic fragrance. It's just a really good and pleasing beach scent. All right, next up we have Mason Alhambra's Kismet Angel, which I do believe has been renamed Kismet Magic. So this is supposed to be a clone of Angel Share by Killian's, and this one does a pretty good job. There are tons of Angel Share clones on the market, and I really like the way that this one smells. So this one is pretty close. The only difference that I see with this one is that it's missing the oak note that I get out of the original. So this one's kind of boozy, has almost like a honey vanilla sweetness to it. It kind of has that apple pie vibe to it, but not really that heavy into the apple pie like something like Camera has. And what I really like about this, it has kind of a chocolate note that kind of pops in and out during the duration of the fragrance. Overall, it's kind of sweet, a little boozy, a little warm. It's got some vanilla to it, along with some sweet cinnamon and that touch of chocolate that pops out here and there. Overall, it's an amazing fragrance, and I really like the way this one smells. Performance is pretty solid. I get about 6 hours of it, and I get pretty good projection for about an hour of it. Overall, a really good clone. All right, next up we have Badi Oud For Glory by Lattafa, and this is an obvious clone of Initio's Oud for Greatness. So to me, this is kind of a bold and masculine fragrance that's a little unique because it uses saffron and oud and lavender along with some spices like nutmeg in it. While it is massive and strong smelling, the oud in it is really smooth and it's done pretty well, even in the clone. Obviously, they're not using real oud here, but they do a really good job of recreating that style of fragrance, and it comes pretty close. So to me, if you could take Baccarat Rouge 540 and strip out most of the components to it and make it an oud fragrance that's a whole lot more spicy and darker, to me that's what you get in Oud For Glory. To me, this stuff smells amazing. It's really popular on social media. A lot of people pump this stuff up really good. I would probably caution that this is not really a blind buy fragrance, but if you want to take the risk because so many people rave about this clone, go for it. And last but not least is Lattafa Fakhar Black, and this is a clone of YSLY EDP. So YSLY EDP is just a great fragrance. It's a no-brainer dumb reach fragrance for me. It's just inoffensive. It's popular. It pulls compliments. It's very designer heavy. Overall, just a really good fragrance. So Lattafa Fakhar Black is fairly close. It's a little off in the opening to me. It has more of a candy scent, and it's missing out on that fresh citrus and bergamot that the original has. Having said that, it does still smell really good, and overall it's a really good clone, and it is extremely popular. It makes tons of top 10 lists for clones. It has for over a year, and there's a reason for that. It's also very affordable. It opens very citrus heavy with apple and bergamot and a touch of ginger as a spice note, along with a little bit of herbs like lavender and sage. And every now and then it has that bubblegum sweetness note that seems to pop out. Overall, just a really inoffensive fragrance, very beginner friendly, hard to dislike. All right, that's it. This is supposed to serve as a guide to get you to think about some new, maybe different fragrances that you haven't tried or haven't seen someone else talk about. So if you like this type of content, please hit that subscribe button and like this video if you get a chance.